Hey Bulldogs, let's see what's happening this week on Code Blue News. With the 20th anniversary of 9/11 coming up, Joe creates a special package regarding this tragic event. Now please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance in a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silence. Thank you.
Hey Bulldogs, I'm Dallas Rodriguez-Vieira here with Kayron Forbes. Welcome back to Code Blue Season 4.
Holbrook is holding a special town election on October 16th to fill a vacant seat on the Board of Selectmen. The deadline to vote is September 23rd. For anyone interested, email Ms. Warhorn for a voter registration form.
The 20-year war in Afghanistan met its end recently with the capturing of Kabul by the Taliban. The conflicts began after the events of September 11th, 2001. This Saturday marks the 20th anniversary of the tragic events that took place in our country. Over the last 5 months, CBN reporter Joe McLaughlin interviewed a Holbrook native who played a vital role in the day's events.
Notable people throughout our nation's history come from all corners of the country. I'm currently standing in front of the childhood home of one of the most notable people, not only in Holbrook's history, but our nation's history as well.
Meet Andrew Card Jr., the son of Joyce and Andrew Card Sr. He was born and raised here in Holbrook, Massachusetts. Card attended Holbrook Public Schools, where he would graduate from the old Holbrook High School as class president in 1965. His political journey would continue in town as a town meeting member. However, it took off when he became a Massachusetts state representative and later served under President Ronald Reagan as the Deputy Assistant to the President and Director of Intergovernmental Affairs. He then served as President George H.W. Bush's Deputy Chief of Staff and as Secretary of Transportation. After that, he was appointed the White House Chief of Staff under George W. Bush's administration in late 2000.
Mr. Card spent much of his time in the Bush administration behind the scenes, but on September 11, 2001, he was front and center as one of our nation's most tragic events unfolded.
The truth is, the trip to Sarasota was supposed to be an easy trip. It was talking about the president's favorite topic, leaving no child behind education. And believe it or not, we woke to a perfect day. There wasn't a cloud in the sky in the lower 48 states. It was like a perfect day. And the president thought he was going to have an easy day. We piled into limousines, go over to the M.E. Booker School. We go to a classroom that had been converted into a White House command center. So it's got secure phones. It did not have a TV in it, but they brought one in later on. But it was the staff, the national security staff, the entourage that helps the president. A Navy captain by the name of Deb Lauer, who was the acting national security advisor on the trip, she was the director of the White House Situation Room, came up to the president and said, "Sir, it appears a small twin-engine prop plane crashed into one of the towers at the World Trade Center in New York City." That's what she said. The principal, the president, and I all had the same reaction. Oh, what a horrible accident. The pilot must have had a heart attack or something. That was it. And then the principal opened the door to the classroom, and she and the president walked into the classroom, the door shut, and I'm standing there. And Captain Lauer comes up to me and says, "Sir, it appears it was not a small twin-engine prop plane, it was a commercial jetliner." My mind flashed to the fear the passengers on the plane must have had. They had to know it wasn't gaining altitude. I don't know why that's where my mind went, but that was my first thought. That was only a nanosecond, because Captain Lauer came up to me and said, "Oh my God, another plane hit the other tower at the World Trade Center." My mind flashed to 3 initials, UBL. That's what we called Osama bin Laden. The next thing I did was pass a test that chiefs of staff have to pass all day long, almost every day. Does the president need to know? This was an easy test to pass. Yes, I've got to tell him. I made a conscious decision on what I would tell him. I wanted to be efficient. I did not want to have a conversation with him because I presumed he was sitting under a boom microphone, and I didn't want to have a broadcast what I'm saying to him. And I knew that he was kind of sitting on stage in a classroom. It wasn't on a literal stage, but that I was coming in from behind him. And then the teacher told the students to take out their books. The book title, I think, was The Pet Goat, and they were going to read the book with the president. I took that as a chance, as all these students are reaching under their desks to get the book, to walk up to the president. He did not see me coming. He kind of turned a little bit this way. He never looked at me. I leaned over and I whispered into his ear, "A second plane hit the second tower. America is under attack." And that was all I said to him. I stood back from him, and I could see his head bobbing up and down. He had tilted a little bit to the right, but he never turned to me. He certainly didn't say anything to me. I then went back. I did not want him to get up. I did not want him to say anything to me. I then went back to the door. Again, I looked at him. His head was still facing in the other direction. His head was bobbing up and down. I could see the students unbelievably attentive to their books. It was a dramatic contrast. They were excited. They had their books were open. They were ready to start reading. I then opened the door to the holding room. I walk into the holding room, and the first thing I said was, "Get the FBI director on the phone. Get a line open to the vice president, get a line open to the White House Situation Room. Get the crew back on Air Force One. Tell Mark Tillman we're going to have to get out of here." He was the pilot. I then said, "Get the Secret Service to turn the motorcade around and be prepared to leave." To Dan Bartlett, communications person, I said, "Get some remarks written for the president. We've got 600 people in a gymnasium. He's got to say something to them, but he cannot say anything we do not know to be the truth."
Today we've had a national tragedy. 2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country.
As America learned more of the attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon that day, they also became more aware of how devastating of a loss it was. At the end of it all, 2,996 people were killed. 412 of them were rescue workers who rushed toward the scene and worked tirelessly to save people from the burning buildings. Many lives were torn apart as their co-workers, friends, and loved ones were taken away in an instant. It was a day that would change America and the rest of the world forever. The following days would bring images of this dark day, including one of Card whispering the tragic news into President Bush's ear while in that Florida classroom.
It's an iconic photograph. It defines an era. It defines an era. You are living that era. But I am not iconic. The photograph is iconic because it does remind you, or it tells you, to pay attention to. Understand, those of us who are older than you are, remember when you didn't have to go through TSA to go on a plane. TSA didn't exist. You didn't have to go through a screening line. You could go up to the gate a half hour before the plane left and still get on it. You could run up to the plane and greet somebody that got off the plane at the gate, give them a hug. You didn't have to have your letters scanned by something that would be looking for anthrax. You didn't have to have the cargo that comes into the United States to be screened for nuclear material. So the world changed. You don't know the world changed because it's the only world you've known. But the world did change that day.
Tomorrow, September 11th, 2021, marks the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 terrorist attacks on our country. Here at Holbrook's very own 9/11 Memorial, featuring a piece of steel from the fallen towers, the events of that tragic day may be a page in a history book to the next generation of students. But for Andy Card, it is a day he believes we should never forget.
I would say, number one, please do remember it, because there was somebody who touched your extended family's life, whose life was changed because of that day. They may have joined the military or the police forces or emergency forces, because everything changed that day in those areas. So you may know somebody who died as a result of going to war in Afghanistan or Iraq. You may know somebody who died because they went into the clandestine services of the CIA. You may know somebody who became an EMT or a firefighter or a policeman because of that day, and they've died or they've been in trouble or maimed. And that's what I ask people to do. Be, even if you may not feel connected to that day, be respectful of others who are burdened because of that day. That's what troubles me, is that we have an obligation. Instead, we want to remember the aftermath, the consequences intended and unintended after that date. But for those people, and there were people from Holbrook impacted. So, and I keep in touch with the Massachusetts group of families who lost people. And a lot of the pilots came from New Hampshire, and the first plane that left Boston's Logan Airport started in Portland, Maine, flew from Portland, Maine to Logan Airport, and then the bad guys got on the plane in Boston and flew it into the towers. So there is every reason for those of us in New England to have a special connection to those who lost loved ones that day.
Through my research of this story, I learned of the highlighted importance of coming together. 9/11 was a day where Americans stood united despite their differences. As we commemorate the 20th anniversary of 9/11, take a minute to reflect on the tragedy and remember we are all Americans despite our differences. This is Joseph McLaughlin reporting for Code Blue News.
Thanks, Joe.
Attention all students. The hallway guidelines are the same as last school year. Please do your part in following the arrows on the stairwells and in the halls. Additionally, please make sure you're wearing your mask properly. Having your mask partially covering your face is discouraged. Please put it over your mouth and nose completely while in the building. In other news, do you love a good story? Do you want people to hear your voice? If you answered yes to any of those questions, come to a brief first meeting on September 15th after school in room C134 for more information on Journalism Club, formerly known as the newspaper.
This week in sports, boys varsity soccer hosted Rockland and faced a tough loss, also losing 5-1. Come support the girls varsity soccer team today as they host Blue Hills after school. The boys varsity soccer team will be away today at Blue Hills. The girls varsity volleyball team will also be hosting their game against Abington High School at 5 tonight. Reminder that cross country has their first meet on Tuesday, and varsity football hosts their first game next Friday against Wareham.
Calling all content creators. Check out a quick introductory meeting of Video Production Club Tuesday, September 21st after school in the Video Production Club Video Production Lab. Members of the club can learn how to shoot video, edit video, and more without spending a dime on expensive equipment. If you play a sport, you can join for just the fall, winter, or spring. All skills are welcome.
That's all for this week. I'm Dallas Rodriguez Vieira.
And I'm Kayron Forbes. See you next Friday.